Honestly, it's just getting comical at this point. Only a deranged Democrat, left-wing, radical psychopath would be advocating and supporting the wealthy stealing from the poor. Like, you were in line at a food bank in your 50 grand car. Honey, go to your jewelry box, take a couple pieces of jewelry, go into your closet, get a couple of designer handbags, go sell them. That would be enough to sustain you until you got better employment. You have four-wheelers, you have boats, you have this, sell those. These are things you do before you go to the food bank and start stealing food from people who genuinely need it. Like, these are all just material things. Unless it's your wedding ring or a family heirloom, everything's replaceable. There is no way in hell I would not utilize every resource and go into survival mode before I went and asked for free food and took it from people who genuinely need it. I mean, what would y'all do if there were no food banks? Do y'all have absolutely no survival skills? Because the people who genuinely need this food that you're taking it from, they have those skills. They have used all their resources before they have even come here. It's people like you that abuse the system and make us want it to be obsolete. Be advocating and supporting the wealthy stealing from the poor.
That's not our side of the political aisle. That's yours. That's your side. Your side has been doing that for 40 years. You don't look old enough to even remember it, but I do. It was your side that elected Reagan, and Reagan was the death knell of the New Deal. Reagan thought that if we freed the wealthy from taxes, that the money would trickle down to the rest of us. He even called it trickle-down economics. His own vice president called it voodoo economics. And yet, for some reason, over 40 years, no Republican, that's your side of the aisle, yours, has come up with any other plan other than slashing taxes on rich people and deregulating everything. You know, the Environmental Protection Agency, the one that Republicans continue to gut, it's the ones that protect the environment. It was started by Nixon. Nixon was a Republican, but obviously he wasn't right-wing enough because they brought in Ronald Reagan, and he cut more. Every Republican president has tried to cut taxes on rich people. Then you get this jackass that's sitting in the White House now. He's done it not once, but twice. They only believe in trickle-down economics because they have no other ideas. And what they have done over the past 40 years, and you are a living, breathing example of this, is convince poor working class people that those rich folks are looking out for them. They're not. Because the tax burden on the working class goes up the more we cut taxes to these rich folks. You will demonize the poor because, quite frankly, you don't realize how much of a mouthpiece for these rich bastards that you truly are. You don't get it. I do, because I see it. I see it every single day. People who are barely hanging on, thinking that one day they'll be like them. When the game is rigged, you lost it the moment you were born. You will never find a way to win. And they will intentionally tell you it's because the poor people get food stamps. The idiocracy of it all is what really bothers me. I would say you're supposed to be smarter than that, but I realize now, no, some of you are not. That's part of that destroying of the education system. You would know these things, but you don't. What the rich want is serfdom. Go look it up. Serfdom. They want the way it was in feudal Japan, or when the poor in Russia, or the poor in France. That's what they want. And what they did, that the poor in Japan, the poor in France, and the poor in Russia didn't do, was that they had people like you spreading their message. And that is exactly what you're doing with this video. You would know this if you didn't think facts were a scary thing. You're probably a Christian too.
Hello brothers and sisters, welcome back to the channel. I'm hoping that you're doing great from wherever you are watching me from. One thing that I'm asking myself, I never fail to see some of these white women come out and lash out because of food stamps and painting black people as those people who will go and steal and in the stores, go and look for food in the stores. But do we really think that it's only black people that depend on food stamps and all this government support? Because if then it's black people, who are the poor people that are going to be helped if it's not white people? A diabolical question that I'm asking. Now, I try to look at this in a scholarly perspective, and I try to find out why are we seeing these white women coming out and talking bad about black people in regards to all these governmental benefits, including SNAPs, EBTs, and all these other forms of government support. Right now, the white woman's statement telling black people not to steal because the food will help the poor and the people that deserve it. This reflects a deeply rooted ideological and a racial problem. Now, our claim assumes that black people are the ones stealing and not the white people, or others she approves of are the ones who truly deserves assistance. Now, this language that she uses, you understand, it's not neutral, right? It is embedded in the long history of racial stereotyping that associate blackness with criminality, dependence, and moral inferiority. Even in the moment when the U.S. economy is deteriorating, and millions, including white Americans, are struggling due to reduction of SNAP benefits, she defaults to an image of black people as the problem. The fact that white Americans are statistically the largest group receiving food stamps undermines her argument entirely. Yet, our reaction reveals how racial myths persist even against material reality. Brothers and sisters, buckle up for this video. I'll be back and then I'll be sharing my thoughts. I shout out to all brothers and sisters who are featured in this video, who are sharing important perspective and giving a perfect lived examples, because they're the ones who have lived these lives and they are coming out and talking to you. So brothers and sisters, buckle up for this video. I'll be back with my thoughts. As you know, I'm your number one host, Eugene Dr. Story. So let's get into the video. I'll be back with my thoughts in regards to this.
Aren't you? Probably. Pretty sure of it. Because that goes hand in hand with it as well. You see, in the 1980s, there was an unholy trinity made. That trinity was politics, business, and religion. You believe those prosperity pimps that hold on to that Bible every Sunday as if you're actually going to be one of them when you will not. And their submit message gets so ingrained in your head that you then think that the business owners know what's best, that they're the smartest, and that they work hard. They don't. Most of these people are CEOs of companies, and they have never had to get their hands dirty. But that's been the way it's been throughout American history. J.P. Morgan wasn't rich because he was working in steel and oil. No, J.P. Morgan was rich because he sat on his ass while other people worked in oil and steel. Randolph Hearst was not a brilliant journalist. No, Seymour Randolph Hearst was a business owner who had other people being journalists. You see, it is people such as yourself that hold the poor back from ever fighting back. It's you. I want you to understand, when everybody else is in the room talking about solidarity, unionizing, they're talking about a labor uprising, it is you. You turncoat Benedict Arnold-ass people who inevitably will ruin it. You are probably one of the reasons that people don't organize into unions today, because of people like you, believing the lie that the rich have told you. And you come onto the internet after saying this and thinking of yourself as being proud. No one is stealing from the rich, it's the other way around. The rich are stealing from the rest of us. We have seen massive amounts of wealth be redistributed to the rich, and then the rich telling you that, oh my goodness, they're coming for your stuff, not realizing you are amongst people who all have stuff too, but they also cannot afford rent, cannot afford food, cannot afford health insurance. And here you are selling them out. I know this is a ardent task for you to even watch this video because it's over 3 minutes long. That's your attention span. So let me reiterate to you exactly what I said earlier in case you forgot it. You are the reason that 40 years of brainwashing, 40 years of redistributing wealth to the top 1%, the reason these people can buy politicians as well as they buy yachts and planes, you are the reason. You are. You are the reason there is no class solidarity amongst the working poor. You are the reason that unions have fallen out of favor. You. You are the reason the education system, or you are an example of what happens when the education system is destroyed. And you think you're proud. You're also fake. You are the reason that Christianity is on the wane here in America. Because you refuse to do any work and realize how incredibly silly you sound. I would say go get a clue, but I'm pretty sure you couldn't even find that. Congratulations, Judas. You betrayed all of those who are working because you think you'll be like one of these assholes one day. Spoiler alert, you won't.
Sorry to break it to you, but if you vote for somebody that says taxing the rich will make your life better, unfortunately, you are the method. That has to be quite possibly the oldest scam in the book, and you just fell for it. Let's tax the rich. Yes, let's take money from the rich and give it to the poor. Sounds good in theory, except wealthy people don't make money the same way you make money. You have income, your income gets taxed. The wealthy don't work that way. Let me give you an example. I'm not even wealthy. I wouldn't consider myself there yet, but I am 24 years old. I have a business that'll do about $8 million this year. I have a sick life. I get to do whatever I want. I get to travel all the time. I get to live in a nice place. I get to have great meals. Yet I paid like literally next to nothing in taxes last year because I lost money. I pay myself very little from my business because I don't want to have a lot of taxable income. And most of the things I do, I just write them off. And it's not a scam. I'm not gaming the system. I've just built my life around the system. For example, I have a podcast, right? I run a business podcast. Whenever I want to travel and see my friends, I schedule a podcast in those cities. So if I want to see my friends in Miami, I will go to Miami to do a podcast, and I'll just stay an extra day to see my friends. And now that $1,500 first class ticket and that nice hotel or Airbnb that I definitely enjoyed, I wrote it off. That was a business expense because I had to fly over there in order to do that podcast. I make very little money. I take home very little money, but I still get to live the life that I want. And therefore, I am not taxed that much. If you raise taxes on income, which is what most of these Democrat and socialists and communists want to do, you are at the end of the day just going to hurt the people that actually really deserve to keep their money, which is like doctors and engineers, like the people that work really hard and went to school for a long time to get good at a very important profession. they are going to be the ones hurting the most. It's not going to be the ultra wealthy. It's going to be like the second generation immigrant who went to college and then went to medical school and became a doctor. And now he's losing half his income a year because other people out there are lazy and don't want to work for themselves. Sorry to break it to you, but if you vote for somebody that says taxing the rich will make your life better, unfortunately, you are the method. That has to be quite possibly the oldest scam in the book.
Hey guys, this rich guy is trying to explain to you why taxing the rich is actually a scam. Hey guys, I'm a burglar, and this is actually why it's more dangerous to lock your doors, because if you lock your doors, I have to come in through the window, and that's going to cost you more money. Hi, I'm a lion, and it's actually more dangerous to have bars between us and the people because the barrier aggression is going to make me angrier. Hey, it's me, your cat, and this is actually why it's worse for you to keep the food in the cupboard instead of leaving it out in the open, because then I'll get really anxious, and I think you should leave the food open for me to get at my own pace. Do you think we're all idiots and that we've never heard of tax breaks or write-offs, like business write-offs or tax credits? Also, do you think that we're so dumb that we don't understand how tiered tax systems work? He goes on to say like, oh, actually, like you're gonna be hurting like the immigrant doctors, but let's take Zohar Mamdani's tax plan where it's like an additional 2% tax increase on people who make over $1 million of income per year, right? Your average doctor in New York City makes anywhere between $200,000 to $500,000. That's like $500,000 being like the most well-paid surgeon, right? This income tax would quite literally never touch them. It's not just if you have $1 million, it's if you make more than $1 million. And then everything under that $1 million is not taxed by that amount. It's the amount above the million that receives that 2% tax increase. So no, it doesn't just not do anything. Rich people, even though they have a lot of tax breaks and tax write-offs and incentives in various ways, still do have to pay taxes at the end of the day, even if they're finding a lot of loopholes. It would still result in more tax money. And so then people say, oh, but wouldn't they just move? A study by Stanford professor Cristobal Young shows that statistically, no, not really. People are very unwilling to give up their lifestyles. Approximately, I think, 2.4% of people who make that highest tax bracket are willing to move because of tax increases. Also, the rich are clearly willing to spend this money. Mamdani consistently joked that they were spending more money on Cuomo's campaign than he was going to tax them in the first place. That's why Zohar Mamdani was joking in the first place that they were spending more money on Andrew Cuomo's campaign than he was going to tax them in the first place. As you said, rich people's money is not all held up in income. A lot of it's held up in real estate and assets, things that aren't completely liquid, meaning that because they have a total net worth or wealth, that doesn't mean that that's the amount of taxable income they have. So it's already a fraction of the money that they were making that year for real. If the rich guy tries to tell you that you shouldn't actually tax them because that would be you getting played, meanwhile, rich people are lobbying for candidates who will lower their taxes and give them additional tax breaks, he's fucking lying.
Sorry to break it to you, but if you vote for somebody that says taxing the rich will make your life better.
I'm not sure what the point of this video was. It was incredibly short-sighted. When we talk about taxing the rich, we're not just talking about taxing their income. Like there's only one way to capture wealth, whereas if income is the only thing that you can tax. We're talking about a complete system that redistributes wealth from the top to the bottom, however it needs to be captured. And I guess this guy also forgets that after World War II, during the New Deal era, we had all of this. And guess what? The wealthy people didn't leave. They didn't pack up ship and go to other countries because that's ultimately like an empty threat. Like they literally just want to not be able to sell us stuff. If they abandon us, they abandon their customer base. It then goes on to describe how he circumvents the system himself using some of the same methods that rich, wealthy people do in our country. And I'm all for that. Like, hey man, everybody should be able to. But the problem is not everybody can. He talks about how he's not very wealthy, but he can, afford a decent place and he can travel. And whenever he wants to go visit friends, he just sets up a podcast in their city so he can like write off the trip. Okay, all good strategy. Nothing wrong about that. But most of us can't do that. Why? Because the wealthy have taken all the wealth. It could be as simple as making these companies make sure that they pay everyone a living wage, that they give robust benefits, including full health care. Like when my grandpa got out of the army and started working at GE, he got a full 401k, he got full benefits, all paid for, all covered. And he didn't have to have a college degree to get into his position, a position that is now locked behind a college degree. So even the same position that he had that gave him all those benefits is not available in the way that it was when he got it. And the benefit package for that same position is also not the same or comparable to the one that he received. That's because the people in charge have the ability to change the rules in their favor whenever they want. And the other thing is, there are examples of companies that exist within the current system that have better hiring practices, that have better compensation practices. So it's not like it's impossible to treat your employees well. Because at the end of the day, what it really comes down to is they don't want to. And if they don't want to, eventually we're going to have to make them. And this has been the history of America, because every time this happens and we revolt or we unionize or we organize to get our fair share, slowly but surely they start pulling those equitable distribution practices, anything that gives us equality, anything that ensures our rights, they start pulling it back. And again, this isn't really hard because we've done this before. We have the mechanisms. We even have a lot of the rules, a lot of the laws in place. They just don't get enforced because there's a two-tiered justice system. And I will say this again and again, every video until I'm blue in the face. It does not have to be this way. There is plenty of wealth in these United States to give everybody access to food, shelter, healthcare, education. Boom. We could do it. We just don't. Worldwide, we could literally do this. My free time, when I have the opportunity to be creative, I build things like this app, Emotion Soup, that's available on the iOS store. Android coming soon. This is a social emotional learning tool for caregivers and their children. But that's not all that I do. If you click over on my picture here and you go follow the links, you'll find this right here. This is a roadmap to create a more equitable and just society that I came up with on my own. But not really, because guess what? Again, these ideas are here. We have examples that show us that any of these measures could work. Alaska has a form of UBI. It is successful and popular. We could do that. We could start rolling that out in other strategic areas across the board. We have other Western countries that have some form of basic healthcare. It's possible. We can do it. It would save us money. That's the craziest part about that one. It would literally save us money. A few videos before this, I made a breakdown of the $40 billion that Trump just gave to Argentina. Found 11 states with poor outcomes and added them up to where it equaled the total of the population of Argentina. Gave a giant ass list of all the things those states could do with that money. The money that we have, but we don't give it. Why don't we give it? Because the system is broke and the people that are in charge of it are fucking corrupt. I'm so tired of videos like this. Bro, what is even the point? What are you trying to do? Convince poor people that like it's just how it is? There's nothing you can do. You make it sound like there's no plan, like there's no roadmap, that there's no policies that we could implement. We could. They are all there. But if you're right and taxing the rich won't work, then we're left with one option. We'll just have to.
The only way America will recover is by taxing the shit out of the wealthiest people in this country, because they need to pay their fair taxes and they supported this shit. So their punishment will be to be taxed out the hoo-ha. They need to be taxed, and they will be taxed, because to be honest, the amount of money that this administration has stolen, when we find out the amount of money that has been stolen from the American people, the American public, I think people are going to probably shit their pants. Like, I'm not even kidding. How does somebody become a trillionaire while their company is literally failing, right? Where'd the money come from? Where'd it come from? It came from us. It came from us. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. But I hope these corporations, they're seeing, these blue waves occur. I hope they're ready to get taxed, because it's long overdue, y'all. It is long overdue. And I literally can't wait. I can't wait. Just like we see even with New York, all them rich people in New York talking about if Mamdani wins, they're leaving. Where they going? They ain't going nowhere. They gonna go to Florida? That's a joke.
If you ever said you wanted to make America great again, it was probably because you were thinking about the 50s, but you should know the reason why you thought the 50s were so great was probably because we were taxing the rich 90%. And don't believe me, pause to read, but I'm just gonna let you know while you do that. This was until JFK. Again, feel free to pause to read, but here's the thing that I find real interesting. In order to win World War II and to get Americans wanting to fight, the propaganda machine had been up and running so big, so heavy, and also using celebrities. So isn't it interesting that then a celebrity who is also very rich ends up in office, who then also happens to take down our taxes on the rich, especially after so much success with those taxes? Now here's the even stranger part. Isn't it interesting that that same celebrity rich president was suddenly, before his death, of course, his assassination, which doesn't happen very often to American presidents, mind you, that he happened to not only be very much interested in dismantling secret societies, I don't know, like maybe the CIA and its interests, the CIA being a group that does propaganda, that uses celebrities, that depends on Hollywood. And then the other piece, that he was then romantically involved in a certain very special celebrity's life. The nation's most famous, most beloved communist, Marilyn Monroe. Oh, you didn't know she was a communist? Doesn't it make the whole story a little bit interesting? So you're the rich celebrity president that convinced America that it would be better for us if we didn't tax the rich so much, even though it was going really well for us. And now you're suddenly hanging out very publicly, very intimately with the most famous communist in America, and then you get assassinated, something that doesn't happen to presidents.
This is all I got.
The sentiment is shaped by what scholars call the racialization of poverty. In the United States, poverty is imagined as a black problem, even though it has always been a multiracial and disproportionately affect white Americans by absolute numbers. The government propaganda, media narrative, and political rhetoric, especially from the conservative movements since the 1960s, it constructed an image of the underserving poor as black, particularly black women and families. Despite data showing otherwise, public perception continues to associate welfare fraud with blackness. Thus, when she warns black people against stealing, she is invoking a socially programmed stereotype rather than responding to reality. You understand? Her logic reveals the internalization of racialized propaganda and the inability or refusal to recognize white economic suffering as part of systemic inequality, preferring instead to blame black people. Also, another thing that I'm going to be saying is that her statement also exposes a condition in white political behavior. Let's talk about it. Many white voters have historically supported politicians and policies such as Trump's cut to SNAP that actively harm them. Scholars describe this as voting against one's economic interest, yet they justify it through racial identity. Maintaining a sense of superiority takes priority over material well-being. The woman's comment is an example of this. Instead of recognizing that SNAP cuts were enacted by political elites who care little for the poor Americans, she directs her frustration towards black people. This is a classic mechanism of racial capitalism. Elites exploit poor whites but convince them that the real threat is black advancement. The psychological comfort of believing oneself morally superior outweighs the discomfort of recognizing exploitation by one's own leaders. And also, her statements is also anchored in historical construction of deservingness. Now, in the US, welfare discourse, the poor are divided into deserving and undeserving. The deserving poor are imagined as the white, working class, humble, and morally upright. The undeserving poor are The undeserving poor are imagined as lazy, are imagined as irresponsible, are imagined as non-white, especially black. By claiming that food should go to the people who deserve it, she reinscribes this racialized distinction. She does not argue based on need, poverty level, or vulnerability. Rather, she simply argues that deservingness corresponds with racial assumption. This is why she wants black people specifically. She assumes they are the undeserving poor, regardless of economic conditions. Her statement thus reveals how welfare debates are moralized and racialized rather than based on structural analysis. Also, something that I would like to talk about is her commitment. Her comments also exposes the persistent association of blackness with criminality. Even in situations where no crime is occurring, the assumption that black people will be the ones to steal emerges from a colonial mindset in which white prosperity, white property is always legitimate, and black accusation of resources is always illegitimate. And historically, black self-sufficiency, whether in reconstruction communities, independent businesses, or mutual aid networks, was attacked because it challenged white dominance. And today, even accessing public benefits legally can be framed as stealing. If recipient is black, in that case, the rhetoric criminalizes basic survival for black communities while masking the structural theft that produced inequality in the first place. Land theft from native people, labor theft from enslaved Africans, and wealth extraction through discriminatory housing and labor policies, all these were a form of threats and thefts that existed at that time and still exist, of course, right? Now, the irony of her statement is that it appears at the same time when white Americans are increasingly dependent on public assistance due to systemic failure. The economic crisis, aggravated by Trump-era cuts to SNAP, has exposed broad vulnerabilities in the American working class. Yet, many white Americans would rather cling to racial myths than confront the reality that their suffering stems from economic policies, not racial competition. The woman's warning thus functions as a psychological defense mechanism because it protects her sense of status by externalizing blame onto black people, rather than acknowledging that the government and the economic elite who influenced it are responsible for her insecurity. Acknowledging shared vulnerability will demand solidarity, but racial ideology blocks that possibility. Lastly, I would like to say that the deeper problem is epistemological, right? She speaks through a worldview shaped by racial capitalism, not through evidence or ethical reasoning. A statement demonstrates how racism diverts attention from systemic inequality and reinforces hierarchy among the poor. Now, instead of asking why food assistance is being cut or who benefits from the cuts, she polices imagined black misconduct. She reveals the great tragedy of American political consciousness. Racial myths are so powerful that they prevent people from recognizing their shared struggle. The comment not only misidentifies the cause of poverty, but also perpetuates the very division that keeps poor and working people from challenging the economic structures arming them. Now, our words are not isolated ignorance. They are a reflection of ideological machinery that sustains American inequality. Brothers and sisters, please let me know what you think and feel about this video. But until then, let me see you on my next video. Peace, love, and harmony. Salute.